Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. So, today, as long as everything goes smoothly this time, I have a very interesting video for you. I tried to use, um, it's been a couple hours now, but I used this new video camera that I got as a gift. I was going to use it for the videos on my YouTube channel. But it turns out that I don't even get as wide or as large of a view as I do here on my iPhone. Like it kind of cuts me off, like you only see like me from like halfway up. You can't even see like my hands, or like when I have a book or something down here, you can't really see it. So it was kind of limiting in that regard, because that was like the furthest out it could zoom. I was still being cut up a little bit in the picture. But not only that, I just did I probably did about a 30-minute video a couple hours ago, and it chopped it into 4 separate videos. And I have to put it, to a SIM card first anyway. So it kind of sucked because I have to put the SIM card on the laptop and then upload the videos, and it took like 10 to 15 minutes just to do that, and then to upload the first part of the video, the first segment of this 30-minute video. It was going to take like 2 hours to upload the video, so I'm like, nope, I'm going to have to redo this. So yes, I'm sorry that I have not done any YouTube videos lately. It's probably been almost a month, I think, if you look at the last video. Maybe it's been about 3 weeks or so. But it's been very hard for me to set aside the time to where I feel relaxed enough and it's quiet enough, around the house that I feel secure doing, at least a 30-minute YouTube video, which is about all the time I'll get for this video as well, because I do have to be somewhere. I do have to keep track of the time. What time is it now? 2:27. Yep. I only have until about 3 o'clock at the latest. So I'm going to try and rush through the material that I covered earlier today. Basically redo the video that I did, which I really didn't even want to do, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it now, because if I don't do it now, I'm going to have to do it at a later time, and then I'll just be holding myself back that much more. So just go ahead and get it out of the way today, get it done with. So the topic of the video today is somebody asked a question, I think it was on the last video, about drugs or various substances and ceremonial magic, how those two things play together. Because as we know, occultists like Aleister Crowley, he wrote the Diary of a Drug Fiend book. We know that he was such an eclectic character that used a lot of these different substances. He did crazy stuff. The dude was anything that is taboo, basically he did it. So yeah, he dabbled in a little bit of everything, I think. And even in the story, I'm going to go over it just a little bit. If you want to know, if you kind of want an occultist view on substances and all these things and how they interplay with ceremonial magic, I highly recommend you get the book Diary of a Drug Fiend by Aleister Crowley. This is the Diary of a Drug Fiend, and it's a compilation of other works as well. So I think Diary of a Drug Fiend, it pretty much ends... Yeah, about right here. So it's only like this first section of the book right here is Diary of a Drug Fiend. There's Moonchild, and then there are some other works in here as well. So to give a viewpoint real quick from this book, and I guess before I proceed further at all, see, I'm trying to remember what all I covered in the video that I did earlier, the presentation, so that I can transmit. Basically, I'm transmitting all that information into this video now. By manual means. So highly recommend you read Diary of a Drug Fiend. It gets into harder drugs, bad, rougher drugs like cocaine and even heroin in this book. This is kind of going to be a little bit of a spoiler alert, so if you don't want to know how the book ends, I'm going to try not to give away too many details, but I kind of have to discuss it a little bit just for the purposes of this video. But Aleister Crowley's character in the book, and I can't even remember what the main character's name is. It's been about 2 years since I read the book. But him and his lady, or his fiance or whatever, they become... they basically have these spiritual, ecstatic experiences, but they're high on, they are doing a lot of cocaine, and then they end up even getting into heroin and stuff. And I think in this book they snort it, which is kind of odd. I don't really know much about heroin, and we're going to distinguish the difference later between drugs like heroin, crack, cocaine, versus more conscious-oriented substances, such as like LSD, and DMT and things like that. We'll get into the differences on those a little bit. But in this particular story, they both get, real strung out basically on these substances. And towards the end of the book, they come to a place known as, this is the spoiler alert, so if you don't want to know, go ahead and maybe jump forward, a couple minutes into the video, or maybe just 30 seconds to a minute. But what you're going to notice when you read the book is that in the final part, and it actually, I think it starts out, it's kind of split up like Dante's The Divine Comedy. Part 1 is Paradiso, so it's actually it's them really, having their good time. They have the fun time on the substances. And then book 2 is Inferno, and that's where they deal with like the bad, they're having the real bad withdrawals and stuff, and dealing with all the negative aspects of the substance. And then book 3 is Purgatorio. So at the end of the book of part 3, the couple, they find this place called the Abbey of Thelema, and it's basically a place that teaches you to substitute the need for these substances to transfer that energy into your true will. So basically, since they're on such hard substances, they slowly, they practice temperance in this place. They have to. People are there to advance themselves spiritually. It's kind of like a little utopia, like spiritual utopia, this Abbey of Thelema. And so they wean themselves off the substances, and they learn to direct that energy towards their true will instead by the end of the story. So, and then I think they're both completely, possibly sober, I'm pretty sure, at the end, which is incredible because they were eventually going to die, basically, from the path that they were taking. They were going to have a physical death, for sure. So this Abbey of Thelema, a great place for, and I think they need places like this in real life where people can truly learn to channel their true will into what it is they love, instead of getting caught up in doing things that give you temporary relief, but in the end are only going to hurt you. As Damien Eccles says in Midnight Gospel, taking a psychedelic or anything like that, it's being like jumped up to like the 100th floor or the top floor of consciousness, and then you're slammed back down to the bottom level real quick. That kind of goes in line with, I really like this quote. I think it goes something like, before enlightenment, the monk carried water up the hill, and then after enlightenment, the monk carried water up the hill, or something along those lines. But basically, even after you've accomplished enlightenment, the great work is not done. The work here in the physical realm is not done. You still have to continue basically finding a way to live and functioning here in the real world, in the real reality. And I think that's the danger of a lot of these things, especially when you start to mix them with things like ceremonial magic. I mean, we see how brilliant of a guy Crowley was. He was a genius. He was, even though he was responsible for a lot of not good things, he was a genius. He was like an intellectual genius. And he's kind of that example of what happens if, we're going to get into it in the next Morals and Dogma video, but if reason and intellect and all these things govern totally, and you don't have love and compassion in your heart, genuine love and compassion, it's more of just a lust. And he was the beast, he was here to conquer the physical realm in many ways. It was kind of his dharma, was to be like this darker character. But he eventually came to a demise, and it's because he he was pushing the limits of everything. He wanted to know what was real, what could be possible. He wanted to figure out the real fabric behind reality. So he was willing to push his body and push everything to such an extreme. Now, is this really conducive to what most people probably want to manifest in their lives? Probably not. So you need to be really careful. And I want to emphasize the point again that I'm not like a guru or like a spiritual head of any organization or anything. I'm not trying to dissuade you or persuade you or tell you what to do or tell you what not to do. I am simply here giving out information about some of the experiences that I've had, things that I've witnessed in my own life. And I guess this would be a good time to mention, the difference between, we've talked about it in videos prior. Alchemically Stoned, I covered, I have a part 1 video of this book. I highly recommend you watch that video if you want to know more about this topic. But even in that video, I made the clear distinction between substances which are considered more mind expanding, which can still be detrimental, in many circumstances if not administered in the correct dosage. As Paracelsus or Pericles says, I don't know how to properly pronounce his name, but he says, as the alchemist and physician, Paracelsus once warned, poison is in everything, and that which makes of something a poison or a remedy is merely the dosage. So that's really where we want to be careful and be conscious of, if you are going to undertake these things, I'm not telling anyone to break the law. I think you should abide within the law as much as possible. But there are many people who are going to experiment with consciousness. It's just going to happen. It's a part of their dharma. It's a part of their learning process, even here on Earth. But just be careful. Always practice temperance and always be safe. And, many of us had times when we were younger, maybe in our 20s or whatever. I'm currently 31, so I'm kind of getting up there now. And, but, many of us have had wild, crazy adventures in the past. And viewing these things from a recreational versus, a spiritual perspective, I think is a totally different thing as well. So getting back to the mind-expanding substances of things like LSD or mushrooms or DMT, things like that, versus there's a huge difference between these things, what I would call more like God substances, because they're more natural. They contain like plants and things like that that are communicators of certain information and help people, in therapeutic situations, and with coming, they help with epiphanies and spiritual realizations. There's a huge difference between those things and things like crack, cocaine, and meth. Those things single-handedly pretty much destroy people's lives. And they're addictive substances, so people keep coming back to them. It just becomes a crutch. I know a lot of people, or know people who are related to people, or have friends that basically their lives have been destroyed by things like meth. It's terrible. It's awful. I think there's something very spiritually demonic to a lot of these substances, even the ones that are considered more benevolent. I think they can just lead you into certain parts of the astral realm, which could be dangerous. I don't know that it's all safe. I don't really have the answers. So like I said, I'm not here to tell you what to believe or what not to believe. I'm just giving out viewpoints and sharing some resources and reference material, sharing this stuff with you so that you can go out and do research yourself and decide yourself, what is best for you. I'm not taking any responsibility for anyone. Everyone who is an adult, can go ahead and make their own choices, and there can be repercussions for certain actions. So I'm not suggesting that anybody do anything or not do anything. I'm not condoning anything, and I'm not trying to criticize anything too much. But things like heroin and meth and even cocaine. Those are dangerous substances. They ruin people's lives. Just one time can mess you up. You may always want the itch. You may want the itch for that forever. So there are so many dangers to all of these things. Take that into serious perspective. And know that there's a big difference between that and ceremonial usage of these things, whether they be, like an ayahuasca brew or, a plant or whatever it is. Humanity and shamanism and more shamanic cultures rather than the modern, I don't know what the term I'm looking for is, but just a more modern society. More modernistic, I guess, is the term I'm going to go with. Back in the day, when it was more tribal, it's very different from today. Everything's very, very controlled today, I think, because there's so many people. There's such a large population. Powers have become centralized and all of these things. But back then, it was just the tribe. It may have been just a small group of people. And usually they had some kind of the Native Americans smoke peyote, and in South America they have the ayahuasca brew. There's different versions of different things in different cultures that have been around since the beginning of humanity. So these things have always been with us. It's something we can try to, rid ourselves of, but it's a really difficult thing to do because those influences have been with us for a long time. So just take that into consideration as well. And P.D. Newman, I highly recommend this book, Alchemically Stoned, The Psychedelic Secret of Freemasonry. We covered just the very beginning of it in another video, and I probably will at some point if somebody wants me to get into this. We'll continue the video series on this. But it talks about different things. P.D. Newman, he's a really cool guy. He's a 32nd degree Freemason. Really down-to-earth dude. Super cool. They get into how the sprig of acacia, like here's part 1, acacia, how many species of acacia produce large amounts of dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT, and how in a lot of these ancient secret societies, there are different brews and stuff mixed with these psychedelics, or a variation, like something similar to it. Which was used during degrees and ceremonial work and all of these things to give that exalted state of consciousness at the key moment in the ceremony so that enlightenment would take place within the candidate. But the whole idea of that is to take that information and go forth into the world and do good with it. You've gotten the inspiration, you've had the spiritual experience, now go forth and do something with it. I think a problem with a lot of people, especially today in the whole recreational, use of these things, of these substances, is they're not treated sacredly, and then it just becomes like this party thing, and it ruins the sacredness of these plants and these naturally occurring things which God created, which he even writes in the beginning of this. Where is it at? Here, an opening prayer from Alchemically Stoned. As Masons, we are taught never to commence any great or important undertaking without first invoking the blessing of deity. I cannot speak, and I'm really trying to get a lot of information out pretty quick because, like I said, I already did this video today. Here I am doing it again. I will therefore begin this undertaking with a portion of a prayer excerpted from the Holy Royal Archdegree, as the same appears in the American York Rite. Give us grace diligently to search thy word in the book of nature, wherein the duties of our high vocation are inculcated with divine authority. And that's the thing, if we have experiences or we go out and, learn from these things, it's a sacred duty. It's really more responsibility that Source or God has put upon us, or anybody who has, in any way worked with these things, to not misuse them. Don't misuse the power. Do good, tangible work in this world. So I won't really have time to get into any details of these books because I only have about another 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try to wrap up the rest of what I want to say in this video. But this book, you should go out and get a copy if you can. Go support P.D. Newman. And then, so also go and check out my video, as I said before, part 1, where I cover Alchemically Stoned. You'll learn more about the connection between ceremonial magic and just the occult in general. But if you really want to know some connections between some different substances and Western ceremonial magic, the occult, all of this stuff, get this book, Liber 420, Cannabis, Magical Herbs, and the Occult. We have just covered it a little bit. I think I did one video where I had just started to cover this book, so I'm not very far into it, and this is another book series I would like to cover, but it talks about the connection with cannabis, all the way from pre-biblical times to in the Bible, how in the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies, they would burn this smoke. And his theory is that it was cannabis smoke. It gets into way more detail in this, how Jesus was actually took some kind of hemp brew that actually like put him in some kind of paralysis. Like it was purposefully overdosed to put him in like a death-like state for 3 days. And then they came in, took his body from the tomb, and then revived him. So there's a Gnostic interpretation of that story, which is really interesting. It gets into the assassins in here. It gets into the Knights Templar, the Holy Grail, alchemies, a lot of alchemical stuff, different alchemists across history. What other chapters are in here? Oh, it gets into like the Sefer Raziel, and that's another book. Excuse me. The Sefer Raziel, not the one that I have, not the Hamelech one, but there's a different Sefer Raziel which has a cannabis connection, and we've talked about that in prior videos before too. So if you want to learn more about this material, like I said, go ahead and check out my other videos. But I will go ahead and wrap this up here really soon, because I don't have a whole lot of time left. Kind of just giving you my last minute perspectives on a lot of this stuff. It kind of gets into the connection with the crystal ball gazing, cannabis. Gets into Dr. John Dee. He's a super interesting character. He was the astrologer for Queen Elizabeth. He was like a kind of a secret agent guy too. Kind of reminds you of Aleister Crowley in some ways. Alchemy guilds. Yeah, it's just a great book. There's so much in here. Witches. That's always fun. Shakespeare and his connection with cannabis. The Cabaret of Phantasmagoria. So all these, I mentioned it briefly. I think maybe we went over this section a little bit in a video, but around, I think, the Victorian times, they started doing like necromancy and stuff a lot. And seances were actually popular among the rich people and some of the royalty, and they would all get together and hold these rituals and rites and stuff where they would manipulate the light. I forget what it is that they actually do. I guess that's the Phantasmagoria. But they would manipulate the lights and the smoke and stuff like that so that it would appear that there would be like a disembodied spirit, before them. Maybe they would have called upon like an ancestor or something, but these wizards knew how to, for lack of a better term, knew how to manipulate basically light and darkness and bring forth these images, which is really cool. Because I don't remember hearing about any of this stuff in history class, like in school. They didn't talk about this. People used to get together and take substances and see these different visual hallucinations. Some of these were genuine experiences, I'm sure, that people were having, but a lot of them were just people playing pranks or just trying to create illusions so that they could win power over people. That's something that you have to be really conscious and careful about in any of the realms of any of this stuff. Cannabis, psychedelics, like there are people out there who are always just trying to manipulate and basically mind control people. So stay away from that. Think for yourself.